Blessed love, greetings. Welcome to Radio Little Eye, the voice of the sun, community radio in Little Corn Island. My name is Rasta Punch. I'm the director here of this radio station, of course, that was built through a lot of great efforts of this community, through individuals like myself, Radio Carib, also the inspiration from Pacifica Radio in the United States, where I used to be a volunteer programmer. Today I wanted to share a little bit of my thoughts and time and history with Pacifica Radio and how it is that I've come to be here, a director today of a community radio here in the autonomous region of the South Caribbean of Nicaragua. And well, you know, for everybody that may be seeing this video and remember me from the times of Washington, D.C., you must say, oh man, look, you look a lot different. Well, sometimes your images and appearances change, but you're still the same one. And when you hear my voice on the radio, you don't know it's Rasta Punch here, giving you whichever type of great reggae music program or information. And for many years, I was a programmer at WPFW 89.3 FM in Washington, D.C. I started there like I think most people in Pacifica start, which is right on the front lines of what Pacifica Radio is about, which is listener-sponsored radio. If you don't know, well, I'm going to give you a little history about Pacifica. It was founded by a great pacifist, Lou Hill, after World War II. Imagine, in the 1950s, after one of the greatest wars, he was in the camps in California with the Japanese and others that were considered war resistors. He was a pacifist, and when he came out, he said, and he looked around and he said, there has to be a media somewhere that's not controlled by these same special interests that want to sell us wars and sell us different products. And he founded the first Pacifica radio station, and from that time, of course, we've branched out to many different places. Of course, stations in Berkeley, California, in Houston, in New York, in Washington, D.C., the main ones. We're famous for great programming like Democracy Now! From Amy Goodman. And well, I think we're more famous in the communities where you actually have our radio stations. For example, in Washington, D.C., WPFW is one of the only jazz radio stations. At least it was when I left. All the other jazz stations had gone off the air. And well, my time there was at first helping answering the phones, and that's how these stations make their money. And well, from there I started pitching, which is to say going on the air and talking about the importance of a radio station being not controlled by any corporation or special interest, but really controlled by the listeners. You know, these radio stations make up a big amount of funding from the listeners who donate. Of course, I'm sure there's some underwriting or underlining that goes on that we maybe don't see that keeps the station going, but the most point in these radio stations is a free media not controlled by any special corporation trying to sell you something. For example, when you listen to those stations like Pacifica Radio, there's no commercials at all. And well, this idea of community radio has transcended throughout the world to many low-powered FM radio stations in the United States. And a lot of them repeat back some of the same programming that Pacifica produces. And well, you know, when I was there, I was fortunate enough just through being a great personality on the radio for the station to be given an airtime. First, of course, helping co-host a Wednesday night late night program, working with the DC Radio Co-op in those times, which was a small little co-op that trained young people in how to use the different editing tools, the different production tools in radio, how to do your board engineering and other important things, you know, and give you a chance also to express your talent through these programs that, of course, the DC Radio Co-op and others have produced for many programs that are still heard, I imagine, today on WPFW. And from that time, you know, I moved on and had my own program for many years, the Total Mix, which was a great program full of politics and views and on-air acting and theater on air. You know, we used to do celebrity impersonations. We used to do all type of things besides giving a mix, mostly Caribbean music, but a mix from African music, local music in Washington, D.C., go-go, hip-hop, and others. And, well, you know, local bands. That's been a big part of my time at WPFW, always supporting the local bands and local groups around the area. And this, from that Total Mix, I actually was blessed to win an award there for one of the best reggae programs. Even though it wasn't completely a reggae program, we did a good amount of time there. And as I was mentioning, you know, at some point back in the early, when was this, maybe 2008, 2007, the jazz stations went off the air in Washington, D.C., leaving WPFW with the great void to fill in jazz music. So they changed the programming around to fit more jazz music and took some of the reggae programming off the air, where I was changed to another time slot, Friday night, the Reggae Experience, which was strictly a reggae program. And from that time, you know, I had always had a dream to come back here to Little Corn Island, where I actually got my start in radio. The first time I ever spoke on radio was in Corn Island in Radio Islania in the year 2001. And from that I had tasted, you know, what I really wanted to do in life, and I went back to the United States and was even more blessed to work with Pacifica Radio, the DC Radio Co-op, many other great mentors around WPFW 89.3 FM in Washington, DC, who really gave me a chance to excel and not just, you know, sometimes you go study and you study something you don't like, but when I was there studying in the United States, I was really passionate about learning the radio. And not just the corporate radio. You know, I had a few chances to intern a little bit at satellite radio, and I really didn't like the vibe of corporate radio or any of these other stations, even though that's where they supposedly say the money is now in radio out there. You know, it wasn't for me, and I don't think I could ever adjust to that type of having an editor over you, having a media that's controlled by some of these big companies that are causing the wars in our world and selling you these wars. I mean, whether you believe it or not, if you watch Fox or CNN or you listen to these so-called NPR stations, they're not giving you 100% of the reality of how harsh these wars are in other people's nations. We always make an excuse in the media as to why we should be doing these horrible acts of war in other countries and military interference in other countries. And the media just plays into that, down from the TV stations even to the radio stations. And I mentioned NPR. You know, NPR, believe it or not, in the history of FM radio, Pacifica Radio was the first really truly public radio station. And NPR, of course, they were inspired by that and they started theirs, but now we see that they take corporate underwriting, they take a lot of sponsors from corporations, and you can see it in their programming, at least in this recent last years, of how much it's changed with that type of saturation of influence and power from those who you collect money from. You know, at this station here, we tried our best here to implement the Pacifica role model of listener-sponsored radio, but here in Nicaragua is a poor country and people don't have the concept of listening and giving money enough to just keep the station going. So we turn to here a lot of community businesses. We still do a lot of public service announcements that are not paid for by any NGO. In fact, we don't take any funding from any NGO here at this station. This station is completely organically supported from our community, you know. And it's something else too. When we need to do fundraisers, some of the poorest people here still help out and give what they can. You know, even if it's in America equivalent of 20 cents or 50 cents, they give it when we have fundraisers, which we call hablotongs, where we speak on the radio and we send someone around to collect money, or we do raffling for specific goals. You know, as you can see, there's a lot of different repairs here that are always being needed to be done here at the station and in our communal yard where this radio station is. You know, that's another thing. This is the communal property. This is not my property. I'm just blessed enough to be the director of this station at this point in time, but at any time the community wanted to change me or put someone else, they have that power and influence of this station because it's theirs. They have access to it. There's no security guard keeping them out. There's no corporate influence keeping their voice out. Even if we've in the past taken money from a lot of the different foreigner and tourist businesses that are coming to our island as our islands become a hot tourist destination, we still don't depend upon that. And I think in these times especially it shows, because in the last year we've lost hundreds of dollars in support and advertising for our station that kept us alive. And we're still here, still paying our bills the best we can, still ran by almost a volunteer staff, you know. Because this is a communal station, we give a lot of airtime free to anybody in the community that wants to give a program. And most of the people that take that time and use it are the churches. And they do their part to help support. We also, of course, have a small paid staff of maybe one person And myself, who of course I don't make no money out of this. This is like a hobby, because when we talk about advertising, I mean, we are talking about maybe $20 a month that we ask from businesses here. And we run a commercial for them on our radio station every hour that we're on. And we also, of course, do publicity on the internet. Maybe you followed our blog, radiocarib.wordpress.com. And we try to do more than just radio, because in this time we know that radio is becoming a media that is forgotten about. It's forgotten about. It's not to say it's not used, because it's used almost every day by everybody at some point, at some time. And it's forgotten because most people have something else to watch or listen to, especially in this time with devices now, the phones being having their own music, and we have a lot of people that come to this station for share music, and this idea of an open digital society, which doesn't exist in the West, exists here at Radio Little I, because many times, especially when I was leaving the United States, they were beginning to do a lot of different law changes to make sure that artists were getting their money. But sometimes it's really not the artists that get the money, it's these major music groups that are getting the money from your internet airplay. And well, praise Jah, here in this country and through our autonomy of the Caribbean Coast people, we aren't subjugated to any type of digital copywriting laws or using whatever we want to use in the media to regurgitate what y'all are already producing in the corporate media, because that's all it is. Sometimes when we take a play or we take a little extra, we would call it a play from YouTube or something like this. This is putting out information here freely. And we don't pay any organization for the use of that, because that's what radio originally was about. It was about free. All this payola business in the radio nowadays has saturated the airwaves with the same music over and over and over again. That's why some people are stopping to listen to radio and forgetting about it, because radio doesn't want to make itself vibrant anymore. This station here, when I'm not here on the air, they say it's not as vibrant. And so I come here and I give my programs in the evening. I know you've seen one of the videos during my international news program. And it's not just me. There's other people out there in the world that maybe they would want to be more vibrant and express themselves more, but they can't, because it's just a job. It's just become a job to them. And we're so thankful to have outfits like Pacifica Radio still in the United States, as much as some people want to criticize them. And of course, there is no perfect group or movement in the world, so criticizing is always great and constructive. And I think that it's because of Pacifica Radio today that here Little Corn Island has a community radio station like this, you know. And we will continue with the, our original mission statements, because our mission statements as a radio station here was written by the people from here that attended the meetings when we had meetings for months and months. The name of the station was created by the community, and even when I'm not around here, this station will still be very vibrant in this community and thrive, you know. And even people like my personality, and through the digital age we're going to be getting more internet broadcasting, because there's a lot of different radio stations here on the Caribbean coast that would love to have the programming that we give here at this station, you know. Imagine we're the only radio station that goes all night. We're one of the only radio stations that primarily focuses on the Creole culture and identity through our music and through our programmers using English, which is the first language of the Creole people here, you know. And we are going to continue in those missions and visions here at Radio Little I. And I'm glad to share this little video with you today here at the station and talk about how important I think it is that we continue to look for more free media out there. Media that comes from the heart. It doesn't have to come from a textbook. It doesn't have to come from someone that's looking to you all professional in some big studio. It could come right from your own communities. And it's also important to have stations like this to be examples that communities can control their airwaves. In the United States, a radio station like this could never exist because of the oversight of the FCC and the amount of permissions and stuff that they have, obstacles have put in your way to be able to make a station like this without turning into a corporation, without selling out to some big money interest to make your radio station. They just won't give it to you. And I think that it's important that the laws in the United States and throughout the entire world change to allow communities to take back their airwaves, whether it's through FM radio, television, internet, and even in our cell phone age, the cell phone frequencies that are being used around the world. And we see in a lot of those movements, and this is an example to those movements around the world of of solidarity with everybody out there that's fighting to open up a space for communities to have, as we're seeing the information wars beginning, and the governments of the world, especially the Western media and any media that's controlled by these special interests and corporations that are selling us these wars, they don't want to allow these things at all to come up, and we're happy to be a resistance against that and this struggle to open up our media once again. So here we are from Radio Little I today, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Like it and subscribe, and please share your comments on all my videos, not just this one.